The body is where the sense of self resides. Do you own your body? For something to be regarded as self, then it must be something you created or achieved. Otherwise, it's not yours. It's not self. The matter that forms your body is merely borrowed from the earth. You consume the minerals from the food grown by the sun, and in turn, your cells regenerate over and over until one day you are dead and your body returns to the earth. The body is merely borrowed. The body you occupy lets you see where you end and the outside world begins. It gives you a vehicle for experience. It gives you a network enabling you to feel pain and pleasure. It gives you a sense of self. The body gives you a sense of self because it's how you interact with the world. You feel hungry, so you must eat. You must find food, cook food, and eat the food. The hunger belongs to your body, and your body is borrowed matter. Therefore, you inherit the feeling of hunger from the process of regenerating matter. To survive, we must eat, and although the need to eat is thrust upon you by nature, the choice of what you consume is yours. The body you occupy may not belong to you, but how you treat your borrowed matter is something you are certainly responsible for. You nurture your well-being, and therefore I regard it as a part of the self. To put it simply, I believe that the body itself should not be considered self, as it wasn't created by you. It's a default for everyone, a uniform starter kit in which a self can be crafted. The condition of the body is what can be considered self, as this is what everyone sculpts into an original form. The mind is where the voice of the self resides. The mind is within the body. You are born into it, and everyone shares a default version. You can hear the voice of self within the mind. The voice which you identify as yourself speaks from there. My problem with the mind is this: it's easily controlled and manipulated. Without veering off onto the tracks of conspiracy, I just want to say that the manipulation of the mind is a powerful tool utilized by the few to control the many. This brings me to my point. How much of your mind do you control? Ideas, thoughts, and beliefs are all cooked up in your mind, but where do you get them from? Complex ideas come from learning, and you learn by studying the theories which came before. When you think about the current knowledge, you can form new ideas and make advances in the overall knowledge of any field. I think original ideas are few and far between, and these ideas are only conjured by the greatest of mind. Scientists who stray too far from accepted theory are often ridiculed, and their reputation is destroyed. They won't get the necessary funding to continue research into ideas that may break the current paradigm. This shows how the expression of the true self is controlled to maintain particular narratives. When you get into mundane ideas, you can see how you can be manipulated into believing they are your own when they are not. Possessions are things you may consider as extensions or expressions of self. Yet where does the impulse come from to want these things in the first place? Advertising. Marketing is so powerful, and most people just don't understand how much it affects the decision making of the general masses. If possessions are acquired on some level due to clever, subliminal, psychological trickery, then indeed your possessions are not an expression of self, but planted ideas disguised as original ideas. What you think is a combination of everything you've heard. Saying I think usually means I heard. Your thoughts are mainly ideas you agree with. So you grab these ideas and present them as your thoughts. The part which is the true self is that voice which questions your thoughts. The reason things have become this way is due to a deliberately flawed education system. You no longer possess the ability to think properly. You aren't taught how to think. You're taught what to think. Therefore, this part of yourself that questions is doing only that, questioning. Questioning the quality of input you accept as thoughts of your own, when in fact the input is recycled information passed from mouth to ear repeatedly. For these reasons, I would conclude that not much of your mind is your own. You do, however, hold the ability to make it your own. But it's so difficult in today's world to be free from the many control measures surrounding you and suppressing your will to think properly, originally, and freely without limitation and manipulation. Emotion triggers memory, and memories trigger emotions. I believe memories are undeniably a huge part of self, and also that they are completely your own. Much can be said about the accuracy of the memory, but in the scope of what we are discussing, memories can be regarded as your own, and they are expressions of yourself. Memories come from experiences. They are stored somewhere in your mind, and for the most part, they are not subject to manipulation. Even if your experience was a product of manipulation, the memory you possess of the experience is not. It's something you recreate in your mind's eye and conjure yourself. Often the flashbacks of the past are catalysts for emotions. Memories are tied to emotions. Depending on the current state of mind, a memory can bring out different emotions at different times of life. I firmly believe memories are yours, but emotions are not. Everyone feels emotions, but they come with the body and mind in this default package of borrowed matter. How you handle emotions can be identified as self. Handling emotions efficiently comes from mastering yourself. It's your reaction to experiences and the emotions tied to them that is self. Being able to control and handle emotional experiences shows some degree of control over the self. And the opposite is true for those who cannot control or handle their emotions. They have little control over themselves and are easily influenced by external occurrences. Emotions are shared by everyone. They aren't created by you. Your reactions to them are expressions of self. A man is aggravated and becomes angry, so he lashes out. This is an expression of self led by lack of control. Another man in the same situation remains calm, controls his aggravation. These are two expressions of self. You own your reactions to your feelings, and it's from these reactions you build your character. Personality is how you present yourself. Character is who you are. Everyone has many different personalities depending upon whose company they are in. Your personality is portrayed somewhat subconsciously when you are relaxed, and consciously in situations where you must make a good impression. Dates, job interviews, or business meetings. Though your personality is an expression of self, many outside factors control it on a subconscious level. Therefore, it's difficult to decide if it's your own or not. You must abide by social norms to be accepted by your peers. The norms will vary between different social groups, and your personality will usually be under some kind of censor due to the need to be accepted and respected. It is not unusual for individuals to break this censor and act freely and sometimes outlandishly. It's these moments of freedom that I would consider your personality to be yours. The moments when you don't care what anyone thinks about your words or actions. When your personality is bound and restricted by the need to gain acceptance and approval from others, this is when your personality is not your own. Instead, it is an expression of self displayed for conformity. Your personality is moulded and kept in check by society. You are free to step outside these accepted boundaries at your own expense. In general, your personality is expected to lie within a certain spectrum of social acceptance, which is learned from non-verbal cues and reactions to interactions involving yourself and by witnessing interactions between others. Do you create your personality? I think you do. Even if the creation is under restriction to gain acceptance within peer groups, you have the choice at any time to disregard the need for acceptance and act freely, revealing original segments of your personality. So, I would say your personality is a part of self you can call your own. Personality is how you present yourself and how you want to appear in the eyes of others. But character is how you are. Personality is something you create and adapt over time, depending on what paths you take in life. But character is deeper than this. It's built into you and more difficult to control. Character is built subconsciously from role models, and as you grow up, it is further formed from your reactions to emotions and your ability to show compassion. The quality of your role models during childhood will affect your ability to control your emotions and your level of compassion. But it's not always the case that good role models will raise children of equally good character. Some may state that your experiences form your character. And it's true. Yet if you look deeper, you will understand that every experience evokes emotional responses. Therefore, it should be said that the emotional response to experience forms character, not the experience itself. The subject of character is more complex than that of personality. Personality is a conscious construct of self, but character is a subconscious construct of self for most people. Therefore, I'm split on my evaluation of character. Of those with poor character, you have two types. Individuals who can recognize their poor characteristics and through hard work and discipline can strengthen their character consciously, often becoming inspiring, strong-willed, highly disciplined characters. And individuals who don't recognize their poor characteristics and are continually guided subconsciously with little chance to change their character, often fated to repeat the same mistakes time and time again due to lack of accountability, succumbing to ignorance, and being comfortable in mediocrity. For the individuals who make a conscious effort and can strengthen the weakness in their character, I would say yes, they make their character a part of them. they can consider as self. But for those who cannot identify or correct their character flaws, their character is not their own, but a construct of consequence and experience. And what of those who are in between? What about those who can recognize their character flaws, but are unable to strengthen them? There is hope for these people who recognize their weaknesses, but if they fail to make the changes to overcome their poor character traits, they cannot truly call their character a construct of their own making. For those who are successfully able to strengthen their character in ideal conditions, but undesirable character traits reveal themselves during times of stress or from an inability to control emotion, then the character is still a product of external forces and not a product of self. Character can be considered a construct of self for very few people because it requires high levels of self-awareness, the ability to remain disciplined under pressure, and the focus to keep calm when facing emotional stress. Those with the strongest character have learned to keep their ego under control. The voice of the stranger. I consider the ego to be the third internal voice. The other two voices in your mind are what I like to call the do it and the don't do it voice. The voice of discipline and the voice of avoidance. The three voices you hear in your thoughts are not you. Your actions based on the words of these voices are you. Like many points in this inquiry, it's your actions and reactions which are expressions of self, not the catalyst built into your being. I don't think the ego can be claimed as self, but it certainly affects the quality of your nature. Your reactions to your ego will directly influence your emotions and character. So for good emotional control and a strong character, it's essential that you can ignore the irrational commands from the voice of your ego. Earlier, I mentioned how important it is to remain disciplined, and now you can see why it's so difficult. One internal voice says, I should study today. The other says, you can do it tomorrow. And the ego says, you don't need to study. You know this stuff. The voices in your head are two against one. One wants to do what's best. One wants to avoid hard work. And the ego insults you with false pride. To remain disciplined means consistently obeying the do-it voice and ignoring the other two. It's the don't do it voice that leads to procrastination. It's the ego voice that prevents you from taking accountability. It's the voice of the ego that tells you to pass the blame when you listen to the don't do it voice. And this is how a subpar version of you is created. The prideful insights provided by the ego are not always a bad thing. The ego can't provide you with confidence and self-belief, but it can reinforce what you have already earned through hard work and self-discipline. Only a fool will trust the confidence provided to him by his ego when he hasn't acquired the skills to have security in his confidence. How you converse with the commands given by the ego influences the nature of your character. As we discussed previously, only those with high discipline and self-control can say their character is part of their true self. These people can perhaps claim the reactions of their ego commands as self, but for most people, even the reactions to the voice of the ego shouldn't be considered as self, because most have had no control over the creation of their own character. The freedom of lucidity lies within. True expression of self is experienced in the astral plane. This topic is hard to discern because the nature of dreams is not easy to define and their origin is difficult to ascertain. It is widely believed that dreams are formed from our subconscious mind as a method of processing information gathered during the conscious state. Can this type of processing dream be considered a part of self? Or is it a built-in process which is inherited by everyone? Everything you experience while awake is captured in minute detail by the subconscious mind, like a built-in video recorder. But this is a process that our conscious mind has very little or no control over. So while this subconscious part of you is working within you, it's difficult to consciously control it. So I think that dreams conjured by the subconscious mind cannot be considered part of self, as this process occurs with no creation made by you. Rather, it is a creation of a built-in mechanism inherited by the body and mind. Lucid dreams, on the other hand, become a creation of your conscious mind, and this type of dream can be considered self. Lucid dreams begin in the realm of subconsciousness, but at some point the conscious mind realizes that the dream state is active and it is able to take control of the dream, to act and direct the content. This is you consciously acting within the subconscious state and as a creation of your own, so it can be considered a part of true self. One time I had an experience with both my conscious mind and subconscious mind operating at the same time. In fact, those two constructs were arguing with each other in my mind. I was meditating, and at some point I must have drifted into a dream state because my mother, who is dead, came to the room. I was seeing the scene from above my body, and my mother was at the bedroom door, and she said, "Come with me. There is someone here to meet you." I knew it was her dad, who died before I was born, in the way we instinctively know things in dreams. And then it happened. My conscious mind reacted defensively. I heard its voice say, "Go away, you don't belong here." And then my subconscious voice replied, "Calm down, it's your mum." And these two voices went back and forth for a short time, with the conscious mind aggressively telling my mum to go, and the subconscious mind telling the conscious mind to calm down. This experience was interesting because in reality my mum is gone, and my conscious mind, which operates in physical reality, could not comprehend my mother's return. It's just not possible in the real world. Whereas my subconscious mind is very comfortable with these surreal experiences and visions, as it is a vehicle that conjures them. So it remains unfazed by the whole scene. Is this experience a part of true self? Well, no, because I felt like a bystander in the whole event. I felt like I was watching it and not doing it. Biological electricity. The most basic way to define consciousness is awareness. Consciousness is biological electricity. Consciousness is what connects the body and the mind together. The reason I say it's biological electricity is because when the consciousness leaves the being, we die. We can survive when our brain is broken, and we can survive when our body is broken. But when consciousness leaves both body and mind, they are dead. I like to think of consciousness as electricity for life, because it works a bit like your house electricity. The power is stored and used to power your devices. If a device, like your TV, breaks, the electricity returns to the power source. Then you get a new TV and the electricity returns to power the new TV. This is how I think life works. A sort of reincarnation of biological electricity. But I don't believe our mind and memories are reincarnated with this energy. Those are left with the dead body. So do I think consciousness can be considered self? Well, again, it's like the body. It's borrowed. You had no choice in gaining your body or consciousness. So consciousness itself can't be considered self. But your level of consciousness can be a product of you and can be considered self. So everything considered points to the fact that true self is a very small proportion of what you possess. It is well shown here that much of what the average person considers to be self is inherited, borrowed, and covertly or overtly inserted, then accepted as self. That which can be considered self are the things which are chosen by individuals when responding to the mechanisms of the perceived self, body, mind, and consciousness. When you realize that what you consider self is minimal, and if you have the capacity to reflect and criticize your own reactions, then you can begin to expand yourself in a way that is impossible when you are stuck in naive thinking, understanding of the world. For many, the argument I made is not important, and that is fine. But let's be serious for a second. Many of the problems in today's society are a direct consequence of a population of individuals neglecting self. A society of insightful people build pyramids. They do not stare at screens with an incessantly flicking thumb. They built an inner technology that current society cannot fathom. The pyramid builders didn't live in a society with little understanding of inner knowledge. That society used positive manipulation to enhance self, whereas today's society does the exact opposite. And that is the reason why the self is broken. This is the reason why the self is minimal. This is the reason consciousness is low and people are malleable. The majority don't realize they are reacting. Some don't know how much reactions matter, and very few are insightful enough to realize that reactions shape the self in a way that constructs strong, powerful psyches. The power will only come back to the people if the true power of self is resurrected, and then we can return to a golden age of humanity when we live as one and have again the ultimate understanding of harmony.